and welcome everybody to another episode of Transform Your Practice, Transform Your Life. My name is Kristina Schneider, and I'm a practice success coach here at the Ultimate Estate Planner. And if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend that you subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss out on any episodes. And if ever any of these episodes resonate with you, I would greatly appreciate it if you would share it on your social media, like your LinkedIn, so that others can hear about it, can find us. That is how we are growing this particular podcast following organically. Today's episode, I had to jump on and record almost immediately after a pretty heated coaching session that I held recently. And today's episode is entitled The Cost of Compromise: Why You Can't Afford to Keep Mediocre Employees. I was on a coaching session with a coaching client, and part of the discussion was around a particular employee who just wasn't working out. And this particular employee had been there for a little over a year to a year and a half, and a pretty entry level, kind of lower administrative position, and very basic tasks such as just following procedures around what do you do when somebody calls in and wants to book an appointment with you, getting certain files prepared for you in advance of meeting with the client, and even just some simple things like following through with reaching out to certain clients and following instruction that was given to him. And so I, had to have a really difficult conversation with this attorney business owner and around the impact that this particular poorly performing employee was uh, essentially the impact of keeping this employee on. And I could tell that the attorney was not comfortable with some of my recommendations, which is, of course, I'm a big believer of the hire slow and fire fast model. I know the fire fast part can make people feel a little uncomfortable. It sounds cruel. It sounds, kind of not very nice business owner. And the fire fast concept I have to explain is really around not being willing to see the writing on the wall, to listen to your gut instincts about certain employees, and really kind of putting up with cancerous or poorly performing employees for longer than necessary and just kind of like drudging through it. I'm not going to even say surviving, because the impact really is that um, impactful in terms of not only how you feel about your own practice, walking in the door, working with this person, but an even harsher impact that I feel that mediocre employees has is honestly on the other employees in the office. And so, you know, I will tell you that to me is probably the biggest impact that I see. Why? Because if somebody is poorly performing, then what typically happens, what I see is that people go, well, he does X, Y, and Z really well, but he can't seem to get his, mind around doing A, B, and C task. And so, we'll just take A, B, and C task off his plate, and it'll go back to so and so in the office. And your so and so is your highly performing employee that probably trained this new employee when they came on board and was relieved to be able to get rid of this particular responsibility and task so that they could focus on, ideally, higher level, maybe even revenue producing tasks. And now what you're saying is, well, this person isn't good enough to do their job, and you are so good at that job, and we're just going to give that task back to you. I'm just going to tell you from an attorney owner standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, you might say, well, I have to. My business has to function. I've got to have that task done well, and this person isn't cutting it. And so you might see no problem in what I call allowing people to cherry pick their tasks. But I'm going to tell you from that employee standpoint, that is extremely demotivating, kind of morale, kicking, and it can be a form of, it can really start to create a lot of resentment by employees towards not only the employee that's not performing, but you as the business owner. And it's just a natural human feeling. I mean, you can see it on all the social media posts around, toxic workplaces. And it's just like, the kind of sarcastic, well, I'm so good at my job that I got that person's job and that person's job and all the people I supervise, I got their responsibilities back because I do it so well. And it's just not a good feeling. And so I will tell you that it can lead to burnout, it can lead to resentment, it can lead to losing and costing you those high performing employees. And that to me is truly the biggest cost of potentially not being willing to do kind of the hard stuff, the hard part of being a business owner and holding people accountable for the jobs that you hired them to do. And so that to me is really the big ticket of the biggest cost. But there are some additional costs, of course. This person, their incompetence or their inability to do their job is ultimately going to cost you inefficiencies, mistakes, and depending on what kind of mistakes that they're making, perhaps it may cost you clients. It may potentially be a grave mistake from the legal end, and you won't necessarily know that that mistake was made until maybe they're even gone. And now you've got to go administer a particular estate, and you find out, ooh, they didn't send that deed in to be recorded, and now you've got a, untitled asset, a major asset that never made it into the trust, and now it's got to be go through probate. Or worse yet, maybe some other type of mistake made. I've heard of some pretty crazy stories of pretty large settlement checks being sent to the wrong party and the wrong client and having the bank still willing to cash those checks. And yeah, these are some pretty yikes mistakes that happen to people that are not doing their job appropriately and are making mistakes because of their lack of competency or skill set or attention to detail. And so I am definitely not a ruthless leader and business owner that just goes around and willy-nilly's and fires people. I believe in holding people accountable, though. And I will say that when you begin to hold people accountable for the job that you hired them for, it sends a much bigger message to those other workers about what you tolerate and what you won't tolerate. Because the other impact is also you teaching not only existing employees, but new employees that come in, that the business owner just doesn't care if you do the job well or not. Just do good enough, or maybe not even good enough, that you'll still have a job here. I know that my mom worked at a community college, and that was the culture. That is the culture around there. That people are not held accountable, and no matter what mistake they make and what they do and how poorly they perform, you will still have a job here. And what a message to send, right? To be willing to work at a company where they accept C player. Why would I want to be an A player here then? Right? Because now I'm going to be stuck doing all the work and doing all the high level tasks and maybe the low level tasks if the people that don't even do their low level tasks are capable of doing it. And why would I stay on? I don't want to stay on in that kind of workplace. I will feel underappreciated, taken advantage of, probably underpaid even. And so it's not a good impact. And so here, again, I'm not a ruthless leader. I believe in allowing people to rehabilitate. And so my recommendation to my coaching client was to, go through a series of corrective matters. And so I first talked about, holding a review meeting, a performance review meeting. That's something that I don't see a lot of business owners and it's the attorneys that we work with doing enough of. And so definitely recommended that they hold a review meeting, and that part of that review meeting may be a mixture of a very kind of harsh at that point, what I would call disciplinary steps. So we have a recommended three-step disciplinary process. The first being a verbal warning, the second being a written warning, and then the third being ultimately termination. Because by that three strikes, the third strike here, you would know that basically if you continued on the path that you were on, that you were going to lose your job. And so to me, it's a fair way to communicate with employees and give them enough time and space to make corrective measures. And then ultimately, they're making the decisions themselves about whether they can stay on. And guess what? It may be, the impression that I got from this attorney was that she did not want to go down that road of that disciplinary response. And she felt that This person was attempting to try to do better, but the problem was whether they were trying or not, the result was still the same. The tasks weren't getting done completed correctly. The same mistakes were still happening, etc. And I had to try to work with her to really understand it's not personal. This person could absolutely be a fantastic person, and a nice person, genuinely caring to try to be better and do better. And it still doesn't mean you have to put up with and tolerate that mediocrity, right? That you could essentially say, thank you so much for your time here. Your time is up. Unfortunately, this is not the right fit for you. And wish them well and find somebody else that is more suited to come into your practice. And a big fear that I see around it is people will say things like, well, you know, it's better that we have this person on because it's better than nobody. And I'm going to tell you now, I don't believe that. I don't believe that it's truly better than nobody because everyone's being interrupted and bothered and having to pick up the slack and they're talking about this person and it's happening. And there's already efficiencies and cancer spreading within your company when you don't actually handle the true root problem and the root issue at hand. And so, it wasn't an easy coaching session. It was one of my more difficult coaching sessions. I'm not sure 100% that I necessarily had the breakthroughs that I had wanted to, but I thought it would be a fantastic podcast share for those that need to think about that. Are you accepting, kind of mediocre employees and B or C players simply out of fear of the hassle? I know there's hassle of having to rehire and retrain, and now we've got to take the time to train, and we don't have the capacity for that. But at the end of the day, there is just so much additional cost and negative side effects of keeping that mediocre employee on. I promise you, this is coming from experience working in a law practice with people who have been there for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 35 years, several people who have been there for over 15 years. And it's because of the finding the right people to fit the job that we need, holding people accountable, and getting rid of those that are not a part of our team. And we don't want to be a part of our team. So that's what I have for you today. Not a very fun or positive topic per se. This is the other side of being a business owner, right? Is making some of these tough and difficult decisions and actions. But I will tell you that on the other side of it is relief and is improving morale, is improving efficiency and productivity in your office, and really leveling up the standard of work and expectations that you have in your practice from your internal infrastructure standpoint. So, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to tune into today's episode. If I could be of any assistance to you to address this issue or any other practice management or marketing issues, I highly recommend that you take the time to schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me. You can do so and request one by visiting our website at ultimateestateplanner.com. Thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to continuing to help you unlock your practice's potential. Goodbye, everybody.